That's right, it's back. Well, at least temporarily. $15 per hour minimum wage is probably the most fought over portion of Joe Biden's economic stimulus plan, the American Rescue Plan, not just on a partisan side, but just in general. So on one side, we have the General Budget Committee, who basically slammed the $15 an hour minimum wage hike as something that should not be done now because we're in the middle of a pandemic. Things are still looking bad. Jobs numbers, earnings numbers are not the greatest. And some of the economists that have been looking out as to what a $15 an hour minimum wage hike would look like and would do to the economy, well, that's not helping Congress make decisions, at least not any easier. But what we do have is some back and forth, and what it looks like right now is that it could be back. Hey everyone, my name is Randy. Welcome back to the Late Night Grind, a new YouTube channel that I started covering these stimulus package updates and all these crazy developments going on with stimulus checks. So if you're new to the channel, go ahead, click that subscribe button. And if you want to follow along with all the news, all the developments, like I said, click that subscribe button. And what you can do, tap that notification icon and you'll be notified when I release a new video, which I do when I get some new information. And I just want to say a big thank you to all the new subscribers who have joined this channel recently. I really, really appreciate you guys. And if you'd like to help this channel out, best thing you can do is actually by smashing that thumbs up button. Really helps out with that YouTube algorithm. All right, guys, well, let's get into it. So just when you thought the $15 per hour minimum wage rate hike was dead, we have a little bit of a shift. Earlier this morning, the Congressional Budget Committee, like I said, basically slammed the idea of a $15 per hour minimum wage hike right now as probably one of the worst things you can possibly do. Now, economists have been looking over what that's going to do to the economy, what that's going to do to jobs, the job market, not just this year, but over the next 5 years, and as well as how much it's going to cost, what it's going to add to the deficit, all of those things. So what they did was they came out and they said, well, listen, and not only that, the Senate actually voted, including a bunch of Democrats a couple of days ago, voted to not do the $15 per hour minimum wage hike during the pandemic. Even Bernie Sanders was okay with it because he knows this is something that can be added in through legislation at a different time. He didn't even push back against it. So some of the numbers that they're looking at are that it would add tens of billions of dollars to the deficit over the next 5 years, although it would lift approximately 900 million people out of poverty. But with that, it's estimating that there would approximately be 1.4 million people that would be let go from their jobs because as companies are forced to increase their labor costs, there's only a couple of things they can do, and that is to lay off some of the others to pay for some of the others that got raises, as well as raise their cost of goods and services and things like that. It's just not the greatest thing to do overall for an economy. Now, they do estimate that it would help a little bit for some 27 million workers over the course of about the next 5 years. Not only that, it would generate some tax revenue, which is good for the government, but it's bad for the people, as some of those people who will get wage hikes will now go from not paying taxes at all because they don't make enough to actually paying taxes. And when they hit that tax level, after they pay those taxes, they may end up earning less than what they did before the rate hike. So actually today, the text was released from the Education and Labor Department, and in it, they included a provision for the $15 an hour minimum wage rate hike. They did it in a 5-year phase. Year 1 would be $7.50 an hour, year 2 would be $10 per hour, year 3 would be $12.50 an hour, and $15 per hour at year 5. Now, this is something that progressives, this is something that Bernie Sanders has been pushing for a long, long time. So right now we're seeing that battle being fought in Washington, and the interesting thing about it is that it really doesn't include Republicans in this battle. Since the reconciliation bill was passed by the House and by the Senate, the Democrats can push this through with just 51 votes. But herein lies another issue. There are a handful of Democrats, Joe Manchin being one of them, who is a centrist, has already opposed the $15 per hour minimum wage. That could be something that the House needs to consider when going to pass their bill, that there may be 1 or 2 or 3 that are not going to vote for it. So it is not set in stone right now. However, what we're learning is that it is not dead in the water either. So we're watching real time what actually goes on in Washington. I read a lot of the comments that you guys put in all these videos, and the most frequent comment I see is that everything is lies. A lot of you guys don't believe what the government says, or that the government is purposely trying to drag their feet. They only care about themselves, etc., etc. And I gotta tell you, you're not necessarily wrong. However, just on the terms of the time frame, this is kind of how Congress works. We're just seeing it right now, where we're in a time period where it's kind of do or die for some people, and it's very scary out there. Some people can't even put food on the table. So I totally understand it, but I don't think Washington is purposely dragging their feet. There's both sides that have ideas about what they feel will help the economy, will help the American people, and won't put the government in such a bad position moving forward and in the long term. So it's not necessarily that they're purposely dragging their feet. It's just that this is how these types of negotiations go. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of people. Fortunately, there's a lot of American people that are suffering, not necessarily because of it, but they're kind of suffering needlessly. And because of this, there are a lot of American people that are losing trust in the government. And so I totally get what those comments are saying. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know what you guys think of $15 per hour minimum wage. Do you think it's a good idea to have some people lifted out of poverty, meaning while on the other side, you could be putting millions, potentially millions of people out of a job? Have you experienced an increase of going, say, from $10 or $11 an hour up to $15 an hour? What has your tax burden been? Have you actually made more or made less after taxes? I'd be really curious to know this, because I've been reading stories. I've been reading stories about the $15 minimum wage and actually what it does. And there's really stories across the board. There are some people that it's really helped them out, because now they can afford to make now that they're making a couple $100 extra per month, putting food on the table isn't nearly as difficult, or keeping the electric on isn't nearly as difficult. And on the other side, I've read a couple of stories that they said once they were put into that $15 per hour range, they actually had to start paying taxes, and after they did that, they actually earned less than what they did before. So if that has happened to you, let me know in the comments down below. Also, on the community tab on the Late Night Grind channel, I have a poll out. I think the second or third one down from the top at this point, but I basically asked about the $15 per hour minimum wage. Are you for it? Are you against it? And it's 70 some odd % are still for it. So kind of after seeing the arguments for it and the arguments against it, has that changed any of your positions? I'd be really curious to know. All right, so if you're watching this video, I am putting out a video tomorrow that is going to go over the text, all the important points of what the House of Representatives just drafted up. And it includes all the things like stimulus checks, unemployment benefits, the eviction moratorium, unemployment insurance. So be on the lookout for that in the morning. All right, guys, I appreciate you watching. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, please feel free to subscribe and also smash that thumbs up button. I'd greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you guys on the next video.